Welcome back at WNST, Towson, Baltimore, and Baltimore Positive. Says so on the hat. We have merged the streams of 2.5 decades of sports radio and sports out on the web to bring you one full package. All of it brought to you by our friends at DeHarka. There are new flavors. Pumpkin latte, pumpkin cheesecake. They haven't shipped any here yet, but I'm going to be getting it. The peanut butter cup is delicious, so delicious that we made it disappear. We're shipping some over to Don Moeller as well. Our friends at El Guapo are finally open now in Catonsville on Frederick Road. They gave me a green shirt, kind of weird during a Philadelphia Eagles period, but I will be wearing it proudly for Old Mexico. And get on over there, get yourself a margarita, get some quesadillas, delicious food. And across the street at State Fair, where you can stay socially distanced, where we used to get together with people and do these kinds of conversations. We hope to be able to do that again soon, as well as at Fadley's down at Lexington Market. I stood in front of the Fadley sign over in Catonsville where they're opening the new location. I sat at the bar about 2 weeks ago with Amy Hahn down at Lexington Market, historic Lexington Market, and had 2 crab cakes, French fries, and coleslaw, and an iced tea. It was delicious. You can ship those crab cakes anywhere in the world from Fadley's, one click away. And, of course, Moeller and Gary Realty. I did dine at El Guapo with Jeff Moeller. We did not talk real estate. We simply talked salsa. Yeah, and a little bit of Dodgers baseball as well. Don Moeller, I know you've been trying to book this guest for a long time. Very busy person. All of our politicians, certainly this time of year, in this climate right now, very, very busy. And I know it's great to have him on finally.
Oh, I'm delighted to have my good friend, Congressman Anthony Brown. We go way back. We have some shared experiences that we will run by you as we chat today, Nestor. But like everybody else, the congressman has been locked up at home for the past 8 months. Congressman, how are you? And welcome to Baltimore Positive.
Hey, Don, I'm doing fine. I'm grateful that during this pandemic, my family has been healthy. But I know there are a lot of families out there that are struggling either, economically, layoffs, furloughs, health-wise, the virus. So, we continue to work hard in Congress, although it doesn't seem like we're getting as much done as we should be for the American people. But short answer is it's been a tough time for so many Americans, and, it's been challenging for all of us.
Well, we're going to get into all of that. But before we do, Congressman, one of the things we always like to do on Baltimore Positive is really talk about folks' backgrounds. And yours is so unique. Your dad was a doctor, came from Cuba, lived in Jamaica. Your mom was from Switzerland. You grew up in New York. Your MIT, your Harvard. How did your background, which is extremely diverse, inform who you are today and what your core principles are?
Sure. Well, Don, as you mentioned, I'm a first-generation American because both of my parents were born abroad and came to this country for opportunity, but also brought with them the value of sort of helping other people and service. So when I grew up, as I was growing up, my father tried to instill in all of his children the belief, the value that you have to serve other people, sometimes before you get around to serving yourself. And I saw that every day in my father. He was a medical doctor, not a wealthy doctor. He practiced medicine in some of the poorest neighborhoods and poorest hospitals near where we grew up in New York. And I saw him day in and day out, seeing patients, and what he didn't make necessarily in a salary, it was more than made up for in the reward and satisfaction he got knowing that he was making a difference in the lives of his patients. And I knew I wanted to do something like my father. So I didn't go to medical school. I went to law school, but I set out to be in service to my community, in the military, to my country, to my state, in the General Assembly, and now in Congress.
Well, you certainly – go ahead, Nestor.
For you having a father who was in medicine, when you hear that COVID breaks out in March, right? And especially in your area, not just your area in Maryland, but where the first place it broke out. It must have been a different sort of thought for you at that point that we'd be sitting here on the eve of an election, still wearing masks and talking about this.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, think back in March when this pandemic was declared, or early March, late February. And many folks on the East Coast thought it was just going to be isolated to Seattle. That was the common thinking. But we quickly saw it, move across this country. And one of the first things that came to my mind was, do people have access to healthcare, right? Are they going to be able to see that primary care doctor who has a knowledge and understanding to treat them? Because, you asked about my father, and that's what he did. He did house calls. That was back in the day. They did house calls. All doctors sort of did emergency rounds and things like that. And that's what I thought about. Are people going to have access to health care? And what we've seen now during the course of this pandemic is those who are hardest hit, those who are experiencing the worst outcomes, including death, are people who have underlying chronic illnesses, who often don't have access to primary care. We're seeing it in Black and brown communities at higher rates of both infection and death. And I know that having a quality health provider available to a community makes the world the difference.
Well, Congressman, we always say we never, folks who listen know we never go in a straight line on Baltimore Positive. When you talk about health disparities, as we record this interview today, we're in the midst of a hearing for a new Supreme Court justice. And clearly, a major part of that discussion has been on the Affordable Care Act. Can you talk, I know it's something you hold near and dear, talk a little bit about the importance of the Affordable Care Act and the fact that there actually will be a case that comes before the Supreme Court 1 week after the election, November the 10th. There will be a case that comes before the Supreme Court that actually has a chance to take away the Affordable Care Act. Talk about that, particularly as it pertains to your district.
Sure. Look, there are a lot of things that are at risk and jeopardy with the confirmation of Judge Barrett, right? Rights for the LGBTQ community, immigration, a policy. And one of them, as you mentioned, women's reproductive health rights also are going to be at jeopardy. But another one is just more broadly healthcare. The Supreme Court, as you mentioned, Don, the week after the election is going to hear the third case that seeks to undermine the Affordable Care Act. Remember, 11 years ago or so when the Affordable Care Act was passed into law, it was very divisive, right? Almost along party lines. Today, Americans generally embrace the Affordable Care Act because they know it's instrumental in expanding affordable quality health care to tens of millions of Americans who didn't have access to that care 10 years ago, 11 years ago. And so the court is going to hear a challenge to the provision in the Affordable Care Act that they would strike the protections for Americans with pre-existing conditions. There are tens, if not hundreds of millions of Americans with a pre-existing condition. So if that provision is struck, it could very well strike the entire Affordable Care Act. And if not, it will at least leave those of us with pre-existing conditions exposed to higher premiums, making it much more unaffordable. In my district, we have one of the highest levels of uncompensated care today. And I can only imagine that if the Affordable Care Act is stricken, it's struck down by the Supreme Court, and Judge Barrett weighing in to strike it down, that's going to have a really, really big impact across America. But I fear for the 4th Congressional District here in Maryland, where we already have too many families, too many people without health care, health insurance, health care.
Well, it's interesting, Congressman, when you raise that point. There is this disconnect. And this issue, folks who've listened to us know that it's personal for Nestor, know that it's personal for me. Nestor's wife has a pre-existing condition. I have a grandson who has a pre-existing condition and whose mom and dad, my son and his wife, are self-employed. So I will say to people, I still have family and friends who are supportive of Donald Trump for some reason. It's never clear to me why, but they are. And I will say to them, well, what do you think in a case where if he prevails and takes away the Affordable Care Act, you understand that my grandson, because his mom and dad are self-employed, will not have access to health care. And they will go, well, that's not right. That shouldn't be the case.
Well, then why are you voting for him? And that's why I said, well, now you understand why I'm so angry right now.
That's the disconnect. I mean, what is your reaction to that kind of disconnect, Congressman, that we see out there day in and day out. That's not right. That shouldn't be. And I go, okay.
Yeah. You know, sometimes I think people get so tapped into the partisan divide of, you know, do you support Trump or not support Trump? They view everything, every policy discussion and debate as, well, you're either supporting Donald Trump or you're trying to undermine Donald Trump. And I just say to people, look, back off for a minute. Let's step back for a minute. Let's talk about what's at stake here. Okay. Then let's decide what's the best path to take and who supports that. I'll give you another example, Don. I was talking to a constituent, and he said, well, I'm not really that big on Joe Biden, and I might vote for Trump again. I said, wow, okay, that's pretty interesting. This person is an immigrant, okay, and his brother right now is stuck in a country because he can't travel to the United States because he's Muslim, and there's the Muslim ban. And I said, well, you understand that Muslim ban was imposed by Donald Trump. It's overly broad, it's sweeping, and it keeps out people who are no danger, no risk to this country or anyone else. You understand that was Donald Trump's decision. And even then, he says, wow, yeah, no, that's bad. I wish we could, revoke that ban. But I think I'm still going with Trump. I don't understand that.
People will be writing about it for years. I don't know if it's low information. I don't know if it's driven by other factors. I've always said it seems to me, Congressman, there's a little bit of he hates who I hate, therefore he must be good for me.
By the way, I don't think there's any low information anymore. I just think there's misinformation. Everybody has information now. We're a very woke culture, I think, to what this is and what it represents and that the election's happening. I don't think there's anybody that doesn't know that.
Have you put, for people listening and not watching, Nestor once again held his ballot up. Now, Congressman, you need to know it's become a cause celebre on here. We want to know when that ballot is getting to the drop box.
No. It's getting there. Listen, I got to tell you this. The Ravens are playing the Eagles this week, and I feel like I'm talking to Pennsylvania, so I need to keep really holding this thing up for the people of Pennsylvania. I'm just letting you know.
That's his story.
I'm doing my part as an American, Congressman.
And look, and the public service announcement here is, if you still have your absentee ballot in your hand at home, then consider finding those drop boxes in your county. That might be the better way to drop it off.
How do you feel? Speaking of voting, Congressman, talk a little bit about this attack on the integrity of the vote that's absolutely unprecedented across the nation, and talk about how confident you are that when someone takes that vote to a drop box or in a mailbox, it's going to be counted.
Well, Don and Nestor, what we were just talking about ties in perfectly with this question, because there's a lot of information, there's a lot of misinformation. The president is putting out misinformation that is undermining confidence in the vote this year, saying that, tons and tons of ballots are being fraudulently sent in by people, the wrong people, or they're being discarded. So listen, this is what I say to my constituents and your listeners today is, have confidence in the voting process. Have a plan to vote, right? Either have your plan to get to your polling site on November 3rd. Preferably, you want to vote early, but even more preferable than that, vote by mail. But if you're going to do that, you've got to do that now and not wait. But listen, every election cycle, not just in Maryland, but across the country, there is going to be small levels of, let's say, fraud. But that is not what characterizes our elections. So you should have confidence that your vote will be counted, but it won't be counted unless you exercise that right and responsibility. So go out and vote, and let those of us who are paid to do so worry about whether or not it's going to be a fair election. Just do your parts, Mr. and Mrs. Citizen, and go vote.
Well, I want to pick up on that because, again, you mentioned your military service, and I can't think of a better guest to talk about this next issue. And for those of you who are just tuning in, we are speaking with the former Lieutenant Governor of the state of Maryland, Anthony Brown, currently the Congressman from the 4th Congressional District. We'll have him talk a little bit about his district and where that is for those of you listening in a little while. But Congressman, you served in Iraq. I mean, you won the Legion of Merit. You won the Bronze Star. You came out of Harvard Law. You could have done a lot of different things, and you went into the military out of a sense of service. You talked about the importance of your dad in instilling in you this sense of service. One of the things we get asked all of the time, Nestor and I get asked wherever we go, is what will happen if Donald Trump rejects the results of the election and refuses to leave? And one of the questions that people pose to us is, how will the military, how will the top echelon of the military react in a situation like that? Given your understanding of the military, what's your sense of that?
Sure. Look, based on my 30 years in uniform, active duty, reserve duty, a deployment to Iraq, and now my continued engagement with the military. I'm the vice chairman of the House Armed Services Committee. I know General Milley, the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff. I know Secretary Esper, and I also know that they believe that it's important for that civil-military divide in our country. The military has no role in politics. And to your question, the military doesn't have a role in whether or not we have a peaceful transition of power from one administration to the next. If President Trump decides that he's going to interfere with the peaceful transfer of power, he's not going to participate in that. There will be other factors, other forces, other institutions that will have to step in to make sure that there's a peaceful transition. It will not be the military. We don't want it to be the military. We are not a nation that thrives or survives from one coup to the next. Right? Our founders set up the Constitution in our country. George Washington set the example where the military is subordinate to civilian authority. And our military leadership today, both uniform and civilian defense leadership, understand that. So there will be no role for them, either supporting Trump staying in the White House or forcing his removal. That will be a political process that will take place away from the military.
Watch this the Supreme Court hearings all week, and just as a citizen, I feel like, and my wife's had it on all day, and the highs and the lows and the questions and the not being able to recite the 5 freedoms and just basic things that have happened thus far. It just feels like such a fait accompli to me that it almost feels like a dramatic presentation where we already know the verdict.
Yeah, I think that's, I'm afraid that is the case. I mean, the confirmation process for Judge Barrett, I mean, fast track is an understatement. This thing is moving at lightning speed, unprecedented, and it's unfortunate because even if the result, the conclusion will be your confirmation, I think we owe it to the American people to fully understand who she is, what she stands for, what her jurisprudence is, and to try to do that in 3-4 days of hearings before the Judiciary Committee in the United States Senate, I think it's unfortunate. She refuses to answer so many questions. I understand that most every judicial nominee, when you give them a complex set of facts and ask them how they would decide that case, they're typically going to say, look, that's hypothetical. I really can't offer a judgment or opinion about those set of facts. But when you ask a legal question, like she was asked yesterday, does the president have the authority to delay the date of the election in November? There are legal standards that can answer that question, and she refuses to do that. It's unfortunate, and I think she's been overly evasive, and it's going to be a real, disappointment for the American people. Her fast track confirmation.
Why would anybody answer the question? Why would anybody answer the question if they know they got the job?
Yeah.
at the job interview.
And you know, look, she's got a majority Republican Senate, so that's sort of her buffer and her protection. She has a pretty good understanding that she will be confirmed, so she's not answering the questions. And I think that once she's confirmed, you know, we already talked about what's at risk: Affordable Care Act, LGBTQ rights, women's reproductive rights. And I really do think, and this issue came up long before Judge Barrett, I do think that it will be important to look at our federal judiciary as a whole and ask ourselves whether it's properly serving America and what reforms might need to take place.
Well, you know, Congressman, I've been in my my progressive friends, of which are many, and I think part of that club, get very angry when I say what I'm about to say. I said it the other night on an election show that we had, and that is, I'm not really angry at Amy Coney Barrett. She has a judicial philosophy that's shared by many, many others to the right of center. I mean, it was shared by Justice Scalia. It's shared by Justice Alito. It's shared by Justice Thomas. It's a judicial philosophy that I don't think is where we should be as a nation. And I'm totally in a different place. But her judicial philosophy is not invalid. It's just one that I disagree with. The ones that make me angry, and that's where, again, we keep coming back to this election, are those folks who sat on the sidelines 4 years ago, turned their nose up and said, well, you know, I'm not that crazy about Hillary. Maybe I'll take a chance on a reality game show host. Well, that decision 4 years ago is about to give us 3 Supreme Court justices. So I think, again, to me, and maybe you can react to this, translates it back again, folks, don't sit back. Don't hold your ballot up like Nestor is. Get that daggone ballot to the drop box.
Elections have consequences. They certainly do. And yeah, you know, and I agree with you as well, Don. You know, the president put forward a nominee, notwithstanding that 4 years ago the Senate essentially blocked President Trump's nominee, Merrick Garland, their unwillingness to take up that nomination and confirmation process in election year. I think that's wrong. But I think you're right. I mean, look, Judge Barrett, she's been, you know, clear on her position. She hasn't answered the questions during the hearing, but you can look at her record and understand where she's coming from. I think the problem is in the process. And it does scare me that we could have a significant imbalance on the court where you have 6 conservative jurists, no swing jurists, and even if you have one swing jurist, you're still going to be it's going to be hard pressed to find a majority that's going to protect many of the rights that have been in the making for the last several decades. So that's why I say, and you talk about your progressive friends that might not like what you say. Well, my progressive friends may not like what I'm going to say, that I'm saying it right now, but I do think judicial reform is in order. And I do think we need to look at the Supreme Court and ask ourselves, do 9 judges, 6 of whom are very conservative, serve the American public? If you have a court that's talking about rolling back Roe versus Wade, rolling back marriage equality, rolling back so many of the protections that have been long and hard fought, I do think we ought to be looking at reforming the court, which means expanding the size of the Supreme Court to reestablish balance in the judiciary.
Well, someday over a beer we can talk about that. When I dread what this court's going to be. I have some concerns about expansion of the court, but I certainly understand that point of view. We are talking with 4th District Congressman Anthony Brown. We promised his staff that we would get him out here in about a half an hour. We'll do that. Before we let you go, though, Congressman, you care deeply about infrastructure in this country, and we would be remiss if we didn't get you to talk a little bit about infrastructure, why it matters, both in the nation and in the state, because we've seen its failures down in your district with what's happened to the Purple Line and that whole mess right now. Can you bring us up to date on your fight for improving infrastructure?
Sure. Look, the House of Representatives, we passed an infrastructure surface transportation bill as part of a larger infrastructure package to get back into investing in roads and rail, bridges. Our package also includes investments in schools and broadbands. it's essential that this country get back to investing in infrastructure. We are slipping behind. This is both during the pandemic and pre-pandemic with similarly situated, well-developed economies around the world. When you invest in infrastructure, you not only create the kinds of jobs in construction that we need to create, which are great paying, family supporting jobs, but infrastructure is what supports growing economies, expanding economies and communities. The American Association of Civil Engineers gives this country a D- in infrastructure. Much of our infrastructure is failing. It's inadequate. So we passed a bill. President Trump's been talking about infrastructure for 3.5 years, but hasn't had the courage to actually make it happen. I think I'm certain that under a President Biden administration, he'll have the will and will find the way to invest in infrastructure. Sure, it impacts communities around the country and right here in Maryland. But let me also say this, and I think that Governor Hogan, while he may have high approval ratings, people should really be upset with his handling of infrastructure in Maryland. The Purple Line is failing. The developers have walked away because the Hogan administration has failed to work with the developer to deliver that project. It's a project that's going to tie the capital region, people to jobs, less time waiting on the Beltway stuck in traffic. And also Hogan gets a failing grade for his refusal to deliver the Red Line to Baltimore that would have created jobs and would have helped connect that city.
We were going to bring that up, by the way, because I'm here in Baltimore, so we weren't going to let that slide.
Yeah. And look, Baltimore is one of the least connected cities when it comes to mass transit. The Red Line, it wasn't without its own controversy, but all big projects come with controversy. Where is it going to go? What kind of interruption is it going to be in certain communities? But you manage through those issues by working with the community. He took that off the table and refused several $100 million of federal assistance to deliver that project. And as a result, Baltimore City continues to be one of the least connected cities in America.
Well, Nestor, I remind people again, elections have consequences. Very, very much involved in that election 8 years ago.
Hey, the last one birthed this whole project, right?
Hey,
I'd still be doing sports if Hillary would have taken Pennsylvania and Wisconsin,
And under Governor Anthony Brown, you would now be riding the Red Line. So elections have consequences. Nestor, before—
By the way, we read Martin O'Malley's book. Outstanding.
Yes.
Yeah,
hey,
great
Martin
book.
O'Malley was
governor.
a great governor on so many fronts: education, environment, infrastructure. He was great.
Nestor, I've got to tell you before we let the congressman run, he and I had one of the classic moments on the campaign trail 8 years ago. We were – see him smile, and he knows what I'm going to share. We were in the 4th of July parade in Catonsville, and as you know, Nestor, Catonsville takes its 4th of July seriously.
I'm a veteran to that one. My chair was out there in June.
And great people running the parade, but they take their rules seriously. And as the parade was lining up, they have a rule that you cannot have any campaign logos on the shirt. And at that time, Lieutenant Governor Brown, running for governor, was getting ready to walk in the parade. And there was an exchange that was getting a bit animated between some of the parade organizers and the lieutenant governor. And our good friend Kevin Kamenetz saw it, and he's walking down the street, and he says, Don, get over there. So I go over, and I'm talking, and my good buddies who are running the parade, they won't budge. So I'm looking, and the lieutenant governor has a light blue Under Armour shirt. It says Brown for governor, and I've got a light blue Under Armour shirt. Scott Schellenberger is standing there, and he's got extra shirts. So real quick, we said, how about this? How about I take my shirt off? I give it to you. You give me your shirt. I'll hold it. Scott will give me another shirt. I can wear it. And the lieutenant governor went walking down the parade in my shirt, of course, which my kids said, oh, my God, Dad, you can't eat anything without spilling on it. You had the lieutenant governor walking down Frederick Avenue with mustard and ketchup on his shirt. That was an amazing day.
I appreciated that. And I definitely respect the parade organizers' insistence that we follow the rules. I thought a small little logo, no bigger than the logo or the Nike swoosh, would have been fine.
A piece of masking tape is all you needed, man.
Yeah,
That's it.
We could have done that too. But for the record, Don, I did return your shirt. And I returned it in after washing it as well.
The mustard and the ketchup were gone. It was probably cleaner than it had ever been.
Remember old shirts and skins basketball? I would have been a skin that day. I just would have said, you know what? You know, if they're going to elect me, they get all of me. You know, so.
Speaking of gubernatorial elections, you don't live in a cocoon, even though you've been locked up for 8 years. We've got another gubernatorial election coming up here in 2 years. It's a wide open field. You know, people keep saying to me, I wonder if the congressman would consider stepping aside from legislative branch because he misses the executive branch and giving it a shot again. What do you tell folks who I know are saying that to you all of the time?
Yeah, sure. First of all, my service in Congress, it's a privilege to serve, a lot of important work to do. And I look forward to continuing to do that. I like the executive branch, right? I cut my teeth in the military. That's the executive branch. Had 8 good years as lieutenant governor. We did a lot of important things. And as I've always said, Don, to folks, and it's not trying to be evasive, but I'm always going to look for an opportunity to put my skills, my ability, my talents to the best and highest use. Right now, it's serving in Congress, and we'll see once we get beyond this election what the needs of the people of Maryland are, what the needs of the people of the 4th Congressional District, and we'll take a look at everything that's out there. How can I best serve Maryland?
Would it make a difference, Congressman, if the Democrats were to take back the Senate? Would that be part of your thought process where you could actually, again, begin to govern in Washington versus this total gridlock right now where because of Mitch McConnell, nothing will get done? And even if Joe Biden wins, if the Democrats don't take the Senate back, nothing will get done again. Will that be part of your review process?
Certainly that's a part of it, and let me explain why. I mean, look, one of the most basic things you do in Congress is you pass legislation. And under Mitch McConnell's Senate, the House has passed legislation and sent it to the Senate, but it all sits there in McConnell's graveyard. Is not enacted into law or signed into law by the president. So that is frustrating. And it is frustrating to be a member of Congress where all this hard work amounts to very little. But that's not the only thing you do in Congress. You set the agenda in the debate and the dialogue. You set the tone for America and what that means in state houses across the country and how people react to policy and influence policy. So there are a lot of important things that Congress does. One of them is legislating. We don't do a whole lot of that lately. And certainly that weighs on, I think, any member when they decide, hey, am I staying in this business or not?
Well, Congressman, it's been great chatting with you. Nestor, I knew this would be a great segment. Take us out of here, and we hope we can get the Congressman back again.
Good luck digging us out here on the COVID and everything in the aftermath of all of this. And we really do appreciate your time. You're a great guest.
Thanks, Nestor. Thanks, Don.
He is the Maryland 4th Congressional District Congressman Anthony Brown, former Lieutenant Governor. All of our WNST and Baltimore Positive conversations now available in one place at BaltimorePositive.com. And the podcast audio vault available very soon. We're fixing a new house, a bigger house at Baltimore Positive. We are WNST.net, AM 1570 Towson, Baltimore. And we never stop talking Baltimore Positive.